if we only spend 3 of it, you know what we do? We write a negative change order to give the client $2,000 back.
Right.
That's a fun meeting to go to.
Yeah.
The meeting where your project manager hands your client $2,000 because things were better than you expected.
Yeah.
That's much more fun than the I need $3,000 meeting.
Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. I am here with Brian Pontolilo.
Hey, Justin.
Hello, and I am Justin. I'll be your host. Rob's on the road, so today it's just Justin and Brian. But we do have a call-in, and more on that in a minute. Before we get going, it's a quick reminder here of all the ways you can stay connected to us. You can send us questions about your projects, ideas for discussion, people you'd like us to chat with, or suggestion for other future guests in studio by sending an email to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. We have show notes for this and every episode at finehomebuilding.com/podcast, and you can watch videos of this whole spiel on YouTube or on our site.
You know, I have something to say about that.
Okay.
So I watched the beginning of a couple of these YouTube videos, and this is probably the same for the podcasts as well. We at the beginning of the videos, Jeff does this remarkable job of picking sound bites out and weaving them in with the music, and it's really good, and it really sets us up to not be able to deliver.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much they've already seen the best of what.
Yeah. So everybody should just watch the 20-second.
Yeah, it's like a movie trailer, right?
Yeah. We're only going to disappoint you after that.
So our guest, who's still nameless, he's got a lot of work to do today. He's got a lot riding on his shoulders.
Well, the people may have already heard his voice, depending on what clip Jeff will pick for us. But today we're speaking with Jeremy Martin. He's principal of Risher Martin Fine Homes in Austin, Texas. This dude, ladies and gentlemen, has a list of accolades longer than Brian's arm. Jeremy's done everything from finished carpentry to managing on-site construction, interfacing with architects and designers, running sales, marketing, and financial operations. He's a realtor. He holds the highest level of certification from the National Homebuilders Association. He's on the Home Builders Association Board of Directors. And he was listed by Professional Remodeler magazine as one of 40 under 40 and was named Custom Builder of the Year in Austin in 2015. What am I forgetting, Jeremy?
I think that's a great summary.
Man, that is a lot of stuff. And by the way, Austin is a hotbed of building, and to be named Custom Builder of the Year is pretty impressive. So we are thrilled that you're on the phone with us. For those of you that caught our recent episode where Brian had just come back from Austin and we were discussing projects built by Risher Martin, and we got into a discussion about just how the heck their firm is managing to do this fixed price building and remodeling. And Jeremy heard the discussion and sent us a note offering to come on and talk to us about it. So here we are. And Jeremy, we can start this discussion, I don't know, a number of different ways, but I think it would be helpful for us to first just kind of get everybody on the same page about the differences between the typical methods of pricing used by builders. So I'm thinking,
sure, yeah.
I would guess, correct me if I'm wrong, I would guess that most builders are probably doing cost plus. Is that been your experience?
That is what we find.
Okay.
You mentioned we're in a great market. There's a lot of great builders here in Austin that we compete with and are also friendly with and interact with quite a bit. It's a fantastic market. But yeah, predominantly, I would venture to say the vast majority of high-end architect-driven residential work in this town, whether it's new construction or remodeling, is done with a cost-plus contract. In other parts of the country, I think people refer to it as time and materials, which is similar but a little bit different in how the labor rates are handled. A very small portion of the work is handled with a fixed-price contract, which is what we do exclusively. When we started our firm, like most firms in town, we did some cost-plus work for the first year or two. It didn't really resonate with us and how we wanted to do business, and we made the switch exclusively to go fixed price about 5.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Will you tell us a little bit about? Sorry to interrupt, Jeremy. Will you tell us a little bit about how you were doing cost plus? Like describe that a little bit for the listeners who maybe don't know what that is.
Yeah, let's just define cost plus, I guess.
Sure. So I guess simply defined, a cost plus contract, the way it reads, at least the one that we were using, says we're going to take all the money we spend on materials, subcontractor, labor, permits, fees, general conditions. We're going to mark them up an agreed upon percentage, whether that number is 15, 20, 25 is obviously highly negotiable between the builder and the client and what type of work's being performed. The client will, on some monthly basis, let's say, or every other week, they will get a copy of all the costs incurred. You mark them up a certain fee for the builder. The client pays that bill. The project progresses that way for months and months and months, and at the end, the client finally finds out, hey, this is what I paid, right? They arrive at the end. Hopefully they're in budget.
You really don't know. You really don't know until it's too late.
No, and that's why we abandoned that method. It was very uncomfortable for us. We were in these $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 projects. Money is a stressful thing for clients and builders, and conversations about money are very stressful. And it really colors the whole project, really. And at the end, we were getting to these projects, and we were being asked an incredibly simple question. What is my project going to cost? And we were sitting there almost dumbfounded ourselves, saying, we're not quite sure, but we're going to know real soon.
Yeah.
And we're putting ourselves in the place of the client, thinking, this can't be fun from their side because it's not even fun from our side, and we're not the one writing the check. So we just decided we needed to go down a different path.
Well, so hold on. I got a couple of questions surrounding before we get to how the heck you're actually pulling this off. Are you guys bidding jobs, or is it? I know that some companies prefer to not get into bidding wars. So they'll say, "Are you taking multiple bids on this project?" And if the client says yes, then they say, "I'm not interested." Is that the case for your firm or not?
We are our preferred engagement, which is what we've been doing for years, is to engage in what we call pre-construction services. Ideally, we love to get involved in the project at the very beginning, when the client and the architect are just sitting down to talk about schematic, concept plans.
Right.
We want to get involved at that point and be able to offer up what we call an investment range, so that the client and the architect understand what the budget is most likely going to be based on the schematic plans they're working on, so we can get a really good level set right up front.
Right, because that's when a lot of the fundamental changes in pricing are going to happen, is at that very early stage.
Absolutely, and you can set a project up for success at that stage, or you can set it up for failure. I mean, that is what we call the crucial conversation. And in giving good guidance to the architect and the client at that point is critical. And we want to be involved at that point. If we get involved much later, there's less we can do to help the project team be successful in giving this balance between the goals of the project and what the budget is. And there's a greater chance for scope creep, budget creep, disillusionment from the client. So our ideal engagement is to get involved in pre-construction services way at the beginning. We charge a small fee for that, and we want to be part of that team so we can add value in that process.
Right. I think for people, and we have a lot of people in our audience, Jeremy, who are homeowners. We have builders listening to the podcast, but we also have just enthusiastic, avid DIYers who want to make sure they're getting work done on their house in the best possible way for fair prices. And one thing that they may not understand about this typical cost plus or time and materials type approach is that the second that contract is signed, you enter into this thing where the client, it becomes protective of what they're getting for their money, or they want to push how much they're getting for their money, and the builder is in a position where he's stressed out about how much is this really costing me versus what I thought it was going to cost me, and how can I and depending on the builder, I'm not trying to paint a bad picture, but where can I save some money now that I'm in over my head and this is costing me more than I thought. And I'm not bringing this up to say that clients are bad or that builders are trying to scam people. It's just that this is human nature. You put your name on this dotted line, you've agreed to it, and there's so many unknowns that it's human nature to then have a high level of stress and try to deal with that by maybe finding workarounds that honestly both parties seem to lose. Is that
So
sound?
I understand
do you agree
I
with that?
understand your point. In the key word that you used there, which must be eliminated, is the word unknowns. We would not be able to do the fixed price work that we're doing if we did not have just a ridiculously detailed, highly documented set of project specifications. The reason we need to be involved in pre-construction is throughout that process, we are building out a binder of information, which oftentimes is hundreds of pages long, that is incredibly clear for the client and us and the architect, that says exactly the products and means and methods that we're going to use to execute that project, so that not that we would do this, so that we cannot substitute, let's say, an inferior method or an inferior product once construction has started. Because the client and the architect and the builder have this sheet of music that we're all singing off of.
Right.
And it says very clearly, this is the window tape we are using, not a substitute equal or something like that. And that is the way, and it's difficult and it's incredibly time consuming, but it's completely worth it because we can basically eliminate those types of concerns, conversations, and stressors from the project once it starts.
And it's if I remember right, part of, or maybe all of, how you guys have your company structured is to be helpful with this. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, how you and your partner have
helpful to who? The client?
Helpful to getting for them going through this process.
The client going through the process.
No, Jeremy and his company doing this fixed price bidding, so he can explain a little bit about how they work.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's two people inside of our firm whose full-time job is to execute this pre-construction process. My partner, Chris Risher, and Sam Ramsey, who works with Chris real closely. And their job is to produce what we call the book. And like I said, these books sometimes get to be hundreds of pages long of information about scope of work, products, means, methods. And this book is meant to memorialize and document exactly what the client is getting for their fixed price. And it also helps us in this there's this difficult passing of the baton between sales and production, which is a common pitfall for builders. Mm-hmm. Our project manager needs to know exactly how to execute this project to meet the specs in the contract that we signed with the client. So the client has a copy of this book. The project manager has a copy of this book. Our subs are in possession of all these documents as well. And the goal there is to have no mismatch of expectations and obviously stressors. So, yeah, Sam and Chris, we've got two people working full-time, and they only produce probably 12 books a year. It's about how many projects we do. So you can imagine the amount of time, and we're talking hundreds of hours of pre-construction time that goes into producing this document.
And so who pays for that, Jeremy? Like, how do you when you have Acme builders that you're competing against for this job, or the other, let's say not even maybe directly competing, but just competing in the sense of the marketplace, and they're saying, hey, this is what's going to cost us to do your house. They're telling the client, hey, Joneses, this is what we're going to cost to do your house. You know, why would you not? Why is the client going with you versus the one that's going to be, I assume, cheaper, unless you're finding some way to recoup that additional cost? Like, in other words, you're paying somebody up front to do a lot of work, a lot of planning work. And are you finding that you're recouping that money by reducing your stress and your unknowns on the back end of the actual build?
Well, I think, first of all, not everybody in the marketplace is a Risher Martin client, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important for us to find clients who philosophically believe what we believe. And we know we're not the perfect solution for every client. There's a lot of great builders in Austin that offer something different that may resonate with the client, and we've kind of made peace with that. But for our clients, we've kind of got this concept of slowing down to speed up. And so we really want to slow down the pre-construction phase. We want the client to invest a small amount of money to allow us to help them and their architect eliminate as many of the uncertainties as possible, so we can get as very clear about the schedule and budget as we can be. we think eliminating that uncertainty up front, let's say a client spends several $1,000s of consulting dollars to execute this pre-construction process. We can save that and then some on the back end by not building and building things, not having unexpected surprises and change orders. And our clients are willing to pay. I don't think it's more. I just think they're paying for it at a different time. I think they're paying for it at the beginning of the project instead of the end.
Right.
Which usually is a little more palatable for a client. If you can imagine that goes down a little better.
I would imagine. That was what I was curious about, was if you find out that it is just kind of rearranging the deck chairs, or if it was, hey, look, if you want to go this route, you may find that it's worth it for you, but it's gonna cost your clients a little more, and you have to know that, which could still be fine.
And again, I don't think it's costing more. I just think it's just the question becomes, when do you pay that money? Sooner or later, you're going to pay it anyway.
Right.
We always tell clients too, let's say a project is going to be in design for 6 months and construction for 12, and the overall life cycle of the project is 18 months. We think we can spend an extra month or two in pre-construction and pick that time up in construction and save our clients a lot of money in general conditions. The longer our project manager sits there and the construction project drags on, the more expensive it gets. Projects usually drag on because we're waiting for selections or we're working out details in the field. We can save the client money by shortening the project, by having all that worked out ahead of time. So we think, honestly, it's an investment more than it is a spend.
Okay. And these are when you say client, are you typically working directly for homeowners, or are you and they have their own architect? Is that kind of usually how the relationship goes?
Yeah, it's a team. I mean, usually the team is client, builder, architect. Oftentimes we're integrating, obviously, an engineer, because these are structurally invasive projects, interior designers, landscape architects. But yeah, we think the key to success is to really build that team before you get too far down the design path, so that the builder, architect, and client are fully integrated, and they're making decisions based on what the client values and what things cost. We can help with those trade-offs in pre-construction, as opposed to trying to figure these things out once construction started and stress levels are up and things are starting to go over budget. We want to eliminate that wherever possible.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I'm asking is I'm putting myself in the position of what you guys have to go through every time you start a new project, and I just wondered, you have to basically retrain every architect that you encounter the level of detail that you want on those plans in order to make this run smoothly. And I wondered if you had, if that was indeed the case, or if you had in-house design. You're not a design build firm, correct?
No, we're not, and we don't intend to be. We love partnering with architects. I think your point's valid. The first time we go through this process with an architect that we don't have an established relationship with, they may think we're a little bit nuts that we want to know what color the grout is or what type of grout we're putting in the tile when we haven't even poured the foundation yet.
Right.
And so that is a bit of a struggle. But once we go through the process once or twice and they see the value of being able to deliver these projects on time, on budget, with a happy client, the weekly update meetings in the field are low stress, I think they see the value of it. And we've been able to go back to these same architects and execute more projects for more clients. And sure, there's a little spin-up time with that, but again, I think it's worth it. It's worth the investment for us.
Right, and you're working with repeat clients, as you're saying. So, I mean, you're building a relationship with an architect, and you're likely going to work with that architect again on different projects. So,
absolutely. Like, right now, we have one project. We have three projects going with one architect right now. Last year, we had 4 projects going with one architect. So, we're looking to build those relationships, and it takes time. Again, we think it's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah.
When I was in Austin, and when I actually met Jeremy, I was visiting a project that they completed that will be in a issue of Fine Homebuilding really soon, and it was one of the most challenging remodels that I've ever seen, heard about, or known of. It's a remarkable project that I won't get too into now. I'll let people see it in the magazine.
Tease it out, Brian.
But I am, yeah. I'm just going to tease it out. But I am curious, Jeremy. I can imagine that new construction is I can imagine that that within this, even with all this pre-construction work that you do, that there's still a big difference between a new home and a remodel. And I'm curious, is there anything that you that you do differently through the pre-construction process for remodels to just try to better understand the home and conditions that you might find when you actually get into the work?
Sure. Now that's a great question. The first step, and I will say this, the architect on that project that you saw, Furman and Kyle, they were incredible. The accuracy of their plans and the quality of their details, they anticipated so many things with that old house that was out of square and out of plumb. So we really benefited from the fact that our client just hired an amazing architect. They did great work, and that's obviously the starting point. But outside of that, yes, we have to get our subs involved at a pretty invasive level to go do a bunch of investigations. And again, our mindset is we're going to have to do that anyway at some point. We must just do it sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. Eventually, that work has to be done.
Right.
You just might as well do it sooner. That gives you a chance to pivot in the design phase and give the architect some options to draw detail differently if you've discovered the condition. So again, I don't think we're doing any different work than great remodelers around the country. I just think we might be doing it sooner.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, somebody has to measure that stuff. I mean, it might not be the architect. It might be that the architect punts it and the builder has to deal with it, but somebody's doing it.
And so you guys will send the subs out to the project. You go, this is what's coming. Do you send them out with with plans and whatnot, and then have them sort of come back to you and tell you what they saw?
Yes, I mean, there were, on that particular project you're referencing, there were numerous site visits that Chris and Sam from our team were there with the engineer, with the architect. We're underneath the crawl space trying to figure out how to structurally, put this addition onto this existing old stone house. And again, normally those types of meetings happen in the field when the architect's doing their construction administration. But unfortunately for the client, that's when the change orders start flying, right? And that's when the schedules start bogging down. We just are trying to move the timeline up, and that has been a good thing for our clients.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so but I want to, if you will allow it, I want to poke some holes. I want to play devil's advocate. It's fairly easy to, well, not easy, but it's within reason to measure and get to know an old house before you do a scope of work and make your plans for the whole remodel. How do you deal with unknowns that are hidden from sight? Like, I just don't know what's going on in this wall until I open it up. Or is that part of the pre-construction is, look, I have to open your wall. And we might not start for another 3 months, but I need to know what's going on in there now.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So we have had to develop some strategies to deal with that. And let me tell you one that we've started doing in the last couple of years that's been very effective. We're working on a 1930s house right now, a restoration project. And we can't see some of these covered conditions because the client's living in the house. They really don't want to live in their house for 3 months with a hole in their floor or a hole in their wall, which is understandable. So what we do in those cases is we go to the client during the budgeting process and say, listen, we anticipate based on our years of experience, you're going to have a ton of rot in your subfloor. We're going to need to do some repairs. We don't know what the extent of that is. We would like to put an allowance in your budget for rot repair. We'll put a worst-case scenario number in there. What we think is professional is a worst-case number. Mm-hmm. When we uncover that condition during construction, we'll start a meter running. So let's say we had allocated $5,000 for subfloor rot and joists and things of that nature. If we only spend 3 of it, you know what we do? We write a negative change order to give the client $2,000 back.
Right.
That's a fun meeting to go to.
Yeah.
A meeting where your project manager hands your client $2,000 because things were better than you expected.
Yeah.
That's much more fun than the I need $3,000 meeting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I found some rot.
Right.
So it's all about expectation setting. And Chris and Sam are great at this. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. And they are putting money in there that we are happy to give back to the client if things turn out better than we think, but often they don't in remodeling.
And on the same token, how do you deal with clients that just don't know what they want? I mean, I know I've heard of other builders who once they have the first floor of a new house framed, they lay out all the plates, and then they do a walkthrough with the homeowners, the prospective homeowners, and say, to identify anything like, oh, I thought this bathroom was going to be bigger, based on what I saw in the plans, and this feels cramped. Can we make it bigger than this? And how do you, you're a builder. You do this all the time. Clients, this might be the only house they ever build, and this is not what they do all day, and they don't know how to read blueprints. So how do you set up expectations and stay flexible with their changes just based on they have never done this before? And I changed my mind now that I'm seeing the room take shape. I want the fireplace over here.
We've never had that last example. I mean, I feel like a lot of this, again, we're blessed in that our clients are hiring some amazing architects, and maybe that's made our life easier. I'm sure that it has. I'm not going to sit here and say we don't write change orders or we don't ever change things out in the field. Obviously, we have a change order process for that, and we want to serve the client. We understand that this may be their only house. If they want to change the bathroom, then we get after it, get a change order put together, present it to them before we do any work, get it priced and approved. I can't say that it happens a ton, though.
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe we've just been fortunate in that the designs are so well thought out and fleshed out that we don't have any of these major changes. What we have been seeing in the last couple of years, which is kind of funny, is although clients are signing fixed price contracts with us and they're checking our references and we've developed a reputation for being on budget, a lot of clients, I feel like, are holding money in their back pocket for that thing we didn't tell them about, or that unexpected thing. And when it doesn't materialize, as we get to the end of the project, they've got money they wanted to invest in the project, and we end up writing some change orders at the end to add some additional features, capabilities. And that's been fun because at the end, the client, I think, was assuming they might burn this money on unknowns.
Yeah.
Now they get to put it into something they want, which is great. We love those change orders.
Yeah. And how accurate are you with your estimating?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Our internal goal is to be within 1% of the stated budget, and we've achieved that or I guess we're going on over 5 years of fixed price work now. And our average change order rate to the client is also hovering at less than 1%, and the vast majority of those change orders are client requested, scope changes.
1%.
And again, I think that's a testament to Chris and Sam. They're doing a phenomenal job with estimating, anticipating the needs of the client, building in allowances for unknowns that we can sometimes credit back. I think it's a combination of a lot of small things we've just learned and integrated into the system.
That's just it's wild that you can be that close to the target without ever even pouring the foundation. It's just that's impressive for sure. Did people look at you like you guys were insane when you started to go down this path? Like it'll never work. You're never gonna be able to figure it out. I mean, it's easy to say 1%. Let's put this in perspective. If you have a $500,000 project, that means that you are figuring this thing out to within $5,000. I've blown farther past that in a much, 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 much smaller project before. So, did people look at you like this is never going to work? You guys are nuts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the clients have always been excited about it, right? Because this idea that we're going to risk shift off of them and onto us. Clients that are going out to do a $500,000 remodel are already, they feel the risk, right? They feel the strain and the unknown. So shifting that off of them and onto us, they want to believe in it, and they do. I think the architect community has been a little more difficult to convince because they're so used to doing it, cost plus, and that's the way most of their projects go. So that has been a little bit of an evangelizing that we've had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is proof in the pudding. We have architects call past clients and other architects and reference check us. And, this is real, right? We've got $25 million worth of these projects under our belt over the last 5.5 years. And the results are there. So I feel like once they do the reference checking, they kind of settle into it and we get past that unknown and into they're excited to hear about how to do this.
And let me ask you this, Jeremy, when you get down to that 1%, whose wallet does that 1% come out of if you're wrong?
Always ours. I mean, sometimes we're 1% to the good, sometimes we're 1% to the bad. I mean, what we're looking at is over long periods of time, that we can kind of hover in that range, but it's always our wallet. Unless, of course, the client has requested a specific change. But if we miss something, like I'll tell you a funny story. Not so funny. We flat out just missed a Miele coffee maker in a house. It was a $4,000 coffee maker. And we bought that thing. And it was a very painful purchase. And and that's all part of learning. And we've learned a lot of expensive lessons, and we're not going to make that mistake again.
How did you miss it?
Check that now.
Like it was the client asked for it, and it just never showed up on the plans?
I don't know the answer to that, but a lot of these times the scope's changing quite a bit as you're doing value engineering. Things come in, things go out, things come in, things change. It was just look, I mean, Sam and Chris are amazing, but they're certainly not perfect.
Sure.
Yeah.
We just missed it. And that's part of owning a business. It's an expensive mistake. You learn from it. But the client does not need to bear the burden of my mistake.
Right.
That's the key.
Right. And it's fascinating. And you said 25 million worth of projects. How many projects is that you've been working with this system on?
Oh boy, I don't have that answer. Our average job size right now is about $1 million, but it hasn't always been that high. Obviously, the market in Austin's really incredible, as Brian saw when he was here.
Yeah. I
would venture to say that's, 50 projects.
Wow. Okay. And so you've been doing this for quite a while.
Well, I mean, the first year or two that we were in business, we did all cost plus work, and then we started to make that transition, and now it's exclusively fixed price. So, yeah, we've been at this with our fixed price model for roughly 5.5 years.
Very cool. Very cool.
I want to shift a little bit if we can, and I want to hear a little bit about the market in Austin, Jeremy. And as you mentioned it, the building market's good, but it's not just from my perspective, and I think anyone who's read Fine Homebuilding over the years has seen a lot of stuff that we've published from Austin. So from my perspective, not only is maybe the real estate market good so that there's work for you guys, but there seems to be a whole bunch of great architects and really good quality builders in Austin. So what's going on down there?
I don't know, but it is obviously it's a fun community to be a part of. There is just a deep, deep pool of talented architects here. I think a lot of it has to do with the University of Texas. It has an incredible architecture school. A lot of folks come here, get their undergraduate architecture degree, maybe they get their master's degree, and they fall in love with the city and they don't want to leave. And it's such a great community to be a part of. So I got to think that that's driving a lot of the talent from the architecture side. And where you find great architects, I think builders are going to come, right? And we all want to work with top talent, build amazing projects, and collaborate with good partners. So, but no, there are an amazing set of builders and remodelers here. We're lucky enough to be involved in NARI and the Home Builder Association and AIA, so we know a lot of these builders, and there's a lot of talent here.
Yeah.
Again, we realize we're not the best builder for every client, and every project, and every architect in this town. We're really trying hard to find people who philosophically just believe what we believe, where we can add the most value, where we are the perfect solution. And again, we only need, let's say, 12 deals a year, and we hope that we can find 12 people that see the world the way we do, and we can be a great partner to those folks.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you guys do? I mean, I imagine at this point that a lot of your business is coming word of mouth, but what are some of the things that you guys do that you can maybe offer as advice to other builders in terms of marketing, in terms of finding the clients that you want?
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously step one is just to deliver on the promise you've made to the clients you got and the architect partners you're working with. And so a good portion of the deal flow we're seeing is referred to us by architect partners or past clients. Because we've had this unique selling proposition, we delivered on it, and they've got friends that hopefully want the same thing. We've been lucky enough to be included in a couple of AIA Homes Tour, which is a huge event here in Austin, and a wonderful event. You guys should come check it out sometime if you haven't seen it before. But we get exposure to a lot of people through that. By Brian, the house you photographed was on the AIA Tour last year, which is really exciting for us. We do some traditional advertising and some print media. I mean, we're getting some deals through the web, which is a small part of our business, but still, greater than zero. And just being out in the community and having relationships. You'd be amazed that sometimes we're referring work to our builder friends, and they're referring work to us because we have capacity constraints or they have capacity constraints. So just being part of the community, being involved in the industry, I think is a big piece of it.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. And do you have anything else, Brian?
Well, the only other thing I thought I might ask about is, we talk a lot on the show about building science and energy efficiency.
Oh, right.
It is something that our audience seems to be very passionate about, and so much of our questions that we get are about. And so I'm just curious, Jeremy, what are in terms of building a good home in that hot and humid climate, and considering that a lot of what you guys do in Austin, and I don't know the scope of all your projects, but a lot of the building in Austin now is sort of more modern leaning in style. What are the concerns and challenges in your hot, humid Austin climate?
That's a great question. I mean, it's funny. For the last 2 days, we've been working through a crawl space detail with a client and architect about the pros and cons of a ventilated crawl space versus a fully sealed, conditioned crawl space. We're getting into a lot more conversations about dehumidification than we've ever gotten to in the past. Almost every house we've built or remodeled in the last year has some sort of integrated dehumidification unit in it, which I think is a lot of bang for the buck in this type of market, particularly in the shoulder seasons. Almost exclusively, it seems, in the last year or two, all of our houses have gone to kind of sealed attics so we can keep our ductwork and equipment inside the thermal envelope, which, again, used to be an expensive upgrade, and now is becoming more mainstream. A lot of foam insulation, whereas it used to be kind of an option in the past. Obviously, high-efficiency air conditioning, given our climate, is almost standard, and it's been adopted into the Austin code so rapidly that it used to be an upgrade. Now it just kind of happens on every project, which is fantastic. And those are really kind of the hot items.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of metal roofs that are, lifted off of the deck for airflow beneath. We've executed that several times in the last year. Again, I think it's exciting. A lot of this stuff has become more available to the clients, price-wise. And it used to get value engineered out, and now it's in. And so we're pretty excited about being able to build houses that have those features in them.
And I'm not sure if we've talked about this in the podcast, but for those people who don't understand the humidity issue, especially coupled with the fact that Jeremy was just talking about the high efficiency air conditioning systems, the issue that people are having there is that the more efficient your house is from an energy loss point of view, the air conditioner will click on and it will cool down your house so quickly that the air conditioning system doesn't even have a chance to remove the humidity from the air. So what's going on is that a lot of builders are now finding that they have to add a separate dehumidification solution in conjunction with the air conditioner. That sort of, I guess, do those typically run on the same sort of a setup, like they have a humidistat, or is it just on like an interval timer, or how does that operate?
The ones we're using predominantly have their own separate humidistat, and you're exactly right. So the problem is sometimes, particularly in the shoulder seasons, the houses are so well insulated and so tight, so well designed from a solar orientation standpoint with such great windows that you don't need the AC to kick on because it's only 74 degrees outside.
Right.
But it happens to be really, really humid. So the units we're using have their own separate humidistat, and these things crank up and they strip the moisture out of the air, and the house gets very, very comfortable. What's also nice about that, too, is a lot of folks that don't have, dehumidification in their home are being forced to run their thermostats at 72, 73 degrees to feel good in their home.
Right.
With the humidity stripped out of the house, they can bump it up to 75, 76 and still feel good.
Yep.
And these dehumidifiers have an incredible ROI. We think that, if I was building my own personal home, there's no doubt in my mind I would install one. And a lot of the dehumidifiers we're using now have integrated ventilation to them. So we're bringing fresh air in from the outside, dehumidifying it, which is a really cool feature. We used to bring that air in separately through a damper. But now we can integrate that fresh air intake with the dehumidification and get it down to one device with one filter. So there's a lot of great Ultra Air's product we've been using quite a bit down here, and I'm a big fan of that product.
Yeah, we've talked about that for sure, the Ultra Air. I don't know if we talked about it in the podcast, certainly in the magazine, so we can throw some links up onto our show notes blog for people who are not familiar with the Ultra Air.
And your on-off cycling thing, what we're seeing a lot too, again, as these price points start to come down a little bit, as adoption goes up and the manufacturers are able to crank the volumes up on these things, we've installed more variable speed this year than we have in all the past years combined. So we're getting, multi-stage outdoor units or totally variable speed, and that stops that on-off cycling situation and helps dehumidify the house as well. That technology seems to be coming fast, and I just can't but think a couple years from now it's going to be pretty standard.
Yeah. Well,
again, these are, I guess, tying back to the fixed price thing, these are fun conversations. Just to kind of tie all the way back to the beginning of the show, if the client knows what they're going to spend before they sign that contract, then you can sit in a room and have a substantive conversation about, listen, if you know your budget is $584,000, $616.12, for an extra $2,000, you can get a dehumidifier. Do you want to do that? In a fixed price scenario where you can forecast your final cost, you can offer your clients some of these options to integrate some of this technology at the beginning. And that's beneficial for the customer because they know exactly what their budget is and whether or not they can integrate some of these green building features or not.
Yeah, and it's, we spend a lot of time on this show, Jeremy, talking about building it right the first time and ways that you can make a more resilient house. And so this is a really nice dovetail fit for people. If you can get to the point where you really know what something's going to cost you, it allows you to have, like you said, that upfront discussion about, well, hey, what I need to know now if this idea of granite countertops needs to come off the table for discussion so that I can have this other thing, this ultra air ventilating dehumidifier that I think might ultimately be a higher priority for me. And rather than thinking that you're going to get them both and then getting screwed on the back end, it's a really good point.
All these things are working as a system, right? And so I think what's hard is when let's say you're under construction, you're cruising along, your project manager's rocking and rolling, you're putting your mechanicals in, and all of a sudden when somebody says, hey, let's put a dehumidifier in. Okay, do you change your mechanical equipment? All these things have to work together. And so where do you put the humidistat? Do you put a remote sensor on the humidistat? And so these things are best solved at the beginning when they can be integrated into the project plan, into the architectural plans, without having your project manager kind of winging it in the field and getting a suboptimal installation because it was rushed.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's a nice 1-2 combo punch for the people that are interested in really upping their game, either as a builder or in getting the most from your money. It really makes a lot.
Yeah, and I think if there's builders out there that are thinking about doing this, I think the key is you have to be willing to invest the manpower, the training, and the time to do the pre-construction part. Everybody's excited to start construction, right? So am I. I love getting out there and getting into the demo and building these houses. And sometimes it's hard for the client too and the architect because they're excited too. Everybody's ready to turn dirt. But the slow down to speed up thing, it seems to have worked. I would recommend it obviously highly.
Yeah, seems to be working for you anyway.
And it's so much of building, at least in the experience that I've had looking at some really great and successful projects. So much of getting a project really to work is educating the clients,
the
homeowners.
Oh yeah.
And I'm always really blown away when I go to talk to a homeowner about their high performance home, and they can talk like they're an architect or a builder about the house. They know so much, and I guarantee you that Jeremy and Chris's clients speak like that about their houses, and that knowing that stuff, learning that stuff early on is gonna help them. It's going to really help them to understand how things work and why they're making the decision, why they're being asked to make the decisions, why things cost what they do, and why they will cost more if they don't do them now.
And to also know, for people who are not doing this level of forecasting of every piece and component and assembly that's going into the house that they're paying for, it's when the builder says, I know we wrote down zip system sheathing, but, the supplier's out of that, so I'm going to use this instead. But it's okay because it's totally equivalent. It's going to be fine. And the homeowner goes, well, all right. I guess I don't know. So I'm going to trust the builder here. But if you knew you wanted zip and that's what you all agreed on up front, then you have the leverage to say, no, You're going to figure out how to get me that because that's what we talked about. And
well, the good thing is if you're the builder and you made that selection up front and you're not still debating what that material is, then you should know what the lead time on that product is. You should be able to order it early enough. Your project manager can get that order in early enough so you don't have those types of availability lead time situations.
Right. You're not figuring it out the week of. Yeah.
Precisely. And I think, too, these project managers have a really tough job. I mean, Brian saw the house that we remodeled. It was a beast of a job. And we want our project managers focused on quality, taking care of the client, taking care of the architect, communication, peeling this layer of dollars and cents and stress and cost plus invoices off the project manager is a huge relief for them. It's also a big time savings because going to meetings and pouring through cost plus invoices and seeing clients get heated about bills, and that's not a fun meeting.
Yeah.
It's very stressful for the project manager. If we can just get the dollars and cents conversation over with and let them focus on making sure the client feels taken care of, communicated with, and then let them focus on building the house, executing the architect's details faithfully, removing the whole dollar responsibility from that project manager, frees them up to do their best work.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, listen, thanks for hopping on the phone with us, Jeremy. It was a pleasure chatting with you about this, and we thank you for being so open and sharing it with our listeners. I mean, some people would be protective about this kind of, here's our secret formula for how to do this. So, we're happy that you're willing to come on and spread the word and hopefully get some other people on board.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge fan. Love what you guys are doing. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, guys.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
So for the show notes for this, Brian, I think what we also want to do is, as Jeremy was talking, I was picking up on some notes of past things that we've talked about. His system is a little bit different, and he's doing it for remodeling, and I get that. It reminded me of when we worked with Paul Biebel, who Biebels are doing our current Pro Home build, which you can, I think it's finehomebuilding.com/prohome. But Paul has done other articles with us, and he has a very similar system or a very similar take on get the money conversation really sorted out up front, and everything else after, you will be amazed at how smooth everything goes after that. And his method is to have a big spreadsheet where he really knows he does a lot of this upfront work like Jeremy talks about, but he also he kind of like tracks his history. So he can say after X number of projects, hey, based on my experience, it's going to cost about this to do this foundation. So we're going to budget for that. And which is not an unusual thing for a builder to do, but by breaking it down into a spreadsheet, doing it in front of the client, and then having formulas in there that allow you to track changes in real time. Like, listen, for a basic slab is going to cost you this. If you want to add foam, it's going to cost this. If you want to reduce the square footage by X amount, it will cost this. Like, right in real time, and really have that conversation on a big smart board in front of them. And he gets it all completely dialed in, goes, this is the final price. Here's the payment structure. Everybody happy? Good? All right, let's go build. And we're not going to talk about money again. Done. And then it's like you really can just enjoy the process at that point.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, it seems like a really smart system. I mean, it's an overwhelming amount of upfront work. That's the thing. And I wonder if this only really works if you have a company where you can afford to have people dedicated to these tasks. The guy struggling to line up jobs while also wearing a tool belt,
right,
is probably going to have a tough time transitioning to this system. Yeah,
there still though there's a lot of takeaways in what Jeremy said. Another article that we can put on the show notes that is helpful, and it's something that Jeremy mentioned. It was written a few years ago, and I'll have to remember who wrote it, but I'll definitely be able to find it. And it was about these design charrettes. And it's what
a popular term around the office.
Yeah, it's a popular term around the office, and it's just what whether you're doing fixed taking a fixed priced approach or doing, time and materials, the idea that a project is going to be smoother and more successful if you bring everyone together, all of the subs, the architect, the builder, the homeowners, and all the subs, bring them all together really early and go over the details, go through things so that electricians and plumbers aren't bumping into each other, so that framers know where other things are going to be coming through the framing. Just all these little details that if you work them out, and if everyone's on the same page, make for a smoother process.
Plus, you can talk about design charrettes.
Plus, you can say design charrette, and it's a word that I've never heard used anywhere else.
Since we've had that article, we say it around the office all the time when I get together for a little charrette.
I wish there was something a little more builderly that we could use as a term, but
a meeting. Anyway, so that's going to wrap us up for this week. Next week, we're going to get back to some questions. So keep those coming, fhbpodcast@taunton.com. Don't forget to help us out with a rating and review on iTunes and spread the word. I've been told that this is not a grassroots effort. I'm not allowed to say that anymore. Brian corrected me. This is the farthest from a grassroots effort we can get, but it's still very important that you guys help us spread the word, because we care deeply about your opinion of us, and you telling your friends is pretty much the highest form of flattery that we can get if you think it's worth telling other people about. So keep that non-grassroots effort going for me.
And you and I were talking before the show about guests and trying to get guests on here that with points and counterpoints.
Yeah, we want somebody who really disagrees with us.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned at the beginning of the show, like, if you have someone you think would be great on the show, let us know. And maybe that's you. So if you think that's you, send us an email and tell us why you'd like to be on the show. And and especially if you disagree with us, because that's what we don't find a whole lot.
We like smart people who we disagree with.
Yeah.
And we want to, I was saying to Brian this morning that I want to argue with somebody. I want to hear somebody who has a really buttoned up argument for why maybe it doesn't make sense the direction we're going, and not the guy who's going to say houses need to breathe and he's entrenched and he refuses to look at any other evidence. Not that
someone
guy
who doesn't understand building science,
and
but
not
maybe
somebody
someone
stubborn.
Right, but maybe someone who thinks that the lengths that we're going to with energy efficiency and whatnot don't make sense.
Yeah,
and come on.
Yeah, poke holes. We like it. So get in touch with us, fhbpodcast@taunton.com. Until next time, this is Justin for Brian and Iceman Jeff Rose. That's a new nickname.
Thanks for the great intros, Jeff.
All right, we'll see you all next week. Happy building.